Welcome to the Ancestry Seeking Podcast, where your family history becomes your greatest legacy. I'm your host, Barbara Beauregard, and this is Season 2, Episode 3. Let's begin. One of the most common reasons people stop working on their family history isn't a lack of interest. It's confusion, specifically confusion around paper, photos, and digital files. People often tell me things like, I don't know what to do with all this paper. My photos are everywhere. I started scanning, but now everything is digital and I'm even more overwhelmed. If that sounds familiar, you are not alone. Today's episode is about understanding why people get stuck at this stage and how to move forward without feeling like you need to solve everything at once. Here is a common stuck point. Paper, photos, and digital files represent three different generations of record keeping. Paper feels heavy, photos feel emotional, digital files feel invisible and endless. And when these three formats overlap, as they almost always do, it's easy to feel paralyzed. The mistake most people make is thinking they need to decide everything before they touch anything. What system should I use? Should I scan first? Should I organize first? What if I do it wrong? That pressure is what causes people to stop. So, let's talk about paper. First, paper is often the most intimidating. It comes in stacks, folders, boxes, and envelopes. Some of it feels important, some of it clearly is important, and some of it you're not sure. Examples of paper people struggle with include birth, marriage, and death certificates, military papers, letters and correspondence, printed family trees, notes from past research, church and school records. Here's where people get stuck. They believe they must sort and organize everything before they can move forward. But paper doesn't need perfection to be preserved. If you have paper records, the most important first question is not, where does this go? It's, what is this and why does it matter? Even a simple handwritten note like Grandma's baptism record can preserve meaning long before you choose a filing system. Now, let's talk about photos. Photos are emotional, and that's why they're hard. People freeze when they see boxes of unlabeled photos because they know this might be their last chance to identify who's who. Common photo-related struggles include unlabeled photographs, multiple copies of the same image, albums falling apart, digital photos mixed with printed ones. Here's the truth that often surprises people. You do not need to identify every photo to make progress. If you know who is in one photo, label that one. If you recognize a location, write that down. If you remember a story connected to the image, record it. An imperfectly labeled photo is infinitely more valuable than an unlabeled one sitting untouched. And here's an important reminder. Photos without names become anonymous very quickly. If you're the last person who knows who is in a photo, your knowledge matters more than the image quality. Now let's talk about digital files, because this is where people often feel the most overwhelmed. Digital feels like it should be easier, but instead, it often feels like this. Files scattered across devices, multiple versions of the same document, photos on phones, computers, and cloud storage, no clear naming system. The biggest misconception about digital files is that if it's digital, it's safe. Digital is convenient, but it is also fragile. Files can be deleted, drives can fail, passwords can be lost. Digital preservation requires intention, not just storage. And no, you do not need to fix your entire digital life to begin. So where do people really get stuck? Well, here's the core issue underneath all of this. People think they have to choose one format and abandon the others, paper or digital, physical albums or scanned files, binders or software. That's a false choice. Most family history lives across all three formats, and that's okay. The goal is not to force everything into one perfect system. The goal is to make sure nothing meaningful disappears. Now, a simple way to move forward is instead of thinking in terms of formats, think in terms of content. Ask yourself, is this a story? Is this identifying information? Is this a record? Is this something only I can explain? Once you know what something is, deciding where it goes becomes much easier. For example, a handwritten letter might stay in paper form, but you can photograph it digitally so the words are preserved. A photo might remain printed, but you can write the names on a note stored with it. A digital document might stay digital, but you can make sure it lives in a clearly named folder. You don't have to choose one format to honor the value of the item. Here's another realistic example. Let's walk through a very common scenario. You inherit a box with papers and photos mixed together. Instead of sorting everything, you do this. You pull out 5 items, you identify what each one is, you write down what you know, you put them back safely. That's progress, not organization, not perfection, progress. And that progress compounds over time. So why format matters less than you think? People often worry they'll choose the wrong format. But future generations care less about format and more about meaning. They want to know, who is this? Why does this matter? How does this connect to our family? A well-labeled photo on paper is better than a mystery image in a digital folder. A short written story is better than a silent heirloom. Meaning always comes first. Give yourself permission to mix methods. You are allowed to. Keep some things on paper, digitize only what matters most, organize gradually, change systems later. Nothing about family history preservation is permanent except what is lost. Everything else can evolve. Now here is your action step for today. Here's your action step for this episode. Choose one format today, paper, photos, or digital. Just one. Pick one item from that category. Write down what it is and why it matters. That's it. You don't need to scan it. You don't need to file it perfectly. You don't need to finish anything. You just need to preserve meaning. In the next episode, we'll talk about some of the biggest mistakes genealogists make and how you can avoid them without feeling like you've already done everything wrong. Thanks for listening to the Ancestry Seeking Podcast. For free guides, worksheets, and legacy tools, visit ancestryseeking.com. Paper, photos, and digital files don't need perfection. They just need attention.